Hello and welcome to another how-to video brought to you by Tim Unscripted. What you are seeing right now is over an hour and 20 minutes of me working on building the application container and whatnot for Unsloth Studio, specifically for the Olares One. Now, if you caught the first video, I kind of gave you my method for how I do this. And by the way, really, I had to speed this up. This was just purely painful for me. It brought it down to what I would consider a relatively reasonable size, going from an hour and 20 minutes down to about 20 some odd minutes. That's the reason why you see my cursor going all over the screen at this point. So that being said, let me give you the too long didn't watch the video. And I'm saying this because at the beginning and the end of this, what matters most is the experimentation involved. So it didn't work. It just simply did not work. I put a lot of time and effort into troubleshooting, and you can see I'm updating YAML files. I am going through the process of doing research in Perplexity to make this thing actually work. Now, I hope you don't drop off for the rest of the video, but that you stay with me for the color commentary, because at the beginning and the end of this is more about the art of the possible than anything else. And let me tell you, and I'm not saying this to shame you into believing what I believe about the art of the possible, but one of the things that I realize in all of this is the simple fact is that a lot of technology, it doesn't work initially right out the gate. And so that being said, one of the things that I am keenly aware of in this field is the fact that, there's a lot of iteration involved. There's a lot of experimentation and adaptation. Having been in this field for most of my professional life in some capacity or another, none of this surprised me. So my bar is set very low, probably lower than that. Well, anyway, if I start here, if the expectation is here, I set my bar here. And I say that because more often than not, and by the way, you notice right now we are looking at the load sequence. That alone, to get the app to download from Unsloth, took 40, 50 minutes out of the entire time. So it's funny because the troubleshooting itself didn't take all that long, front end and back end, to get things up and running. Or I should say, to at least get them to where I could diagnose and then get to the place where Perplexity told me the bad news. Anyway, side-dragging myself as I was watching this thing download. So what this field has taught me is that it all looks easy on paper. It all looks really simple until you start getting into the nuts and bolts of this, and this is no exception. And I like the Olares One as a playground because it is a great environment to demo out of. And I'm saying this from the standpoint of being in a capacity to record what's going on, having a kind of nice user interface to look at, even though at this point, all we're doing is we're looking at the clock, as the download sequence is going through 40%, 50%, so forth. The fact that this appliance is specifically designed for hobbyists like myself and even professionals, you could conceivably set this up for team use because it is robust enough, I believe, to host about 5 users at any given time. It really, it's not a frictionless experience. It's a lower friction experience. And by lower, I mean, there's a lot of things that in the general sense could typically go wrong. And I'm saying could typically go wrong from the standpoint of I've worked with teams. In fact, even as I'm recording this, I have a team where we're deploying infrastructure as code. And if you're not familiar with infrastructure as code, it's a term used for orchestration, application modernization, running microservices and Docker containers on some sort of Kubernetes orchestration platform with an underpinning operating system on bare metal. And that's not an entirely accurate description of the stack, but I will say that in a general sense, that is a fairly, you know, it's close enough for where we're at with this video. So getting back to the Olares, and I keep saying this over and over again, and it's not to hammer a point home, but it is to state what I feel is one of the few things that we miss, and I'm talking to myself in the software product development community, is removing user friction. And I'm saying this from the standpoint of removing user friction on the back side of things, in configuration, in deployment of applications, in doing a lot of things that even as technologists can be done better. And I've got to give the Olares team great credit for the fact that the platform in general does exactly what I would hope it to do. And by that, I mean, the experience is such that I don't get distracted by errors. I don't get distracted by foibles. I don't get distracted by things that are just simply outside of my ability to influence. They don't frustrate me because by and large, everything is built well. Occasionally an application container gets updated and it doesn't work the first time out. And that was actually kind of where I was going when I was working with the Olares team on some troubleshooting for NemoClaw. And ultimately, it was mutually decided, myself and my point of contact, that it wasn't worth trying to really fix some of the technical challenges. It was going to be better to move from NemoClaw to OpenClaw in order to put together my racetrack demo concept. Those videos, by the way, they are on a playlist called the Olares Project, and it is stepping through the drop sequence right now. By the way, when I mean drop sequence, I recorded 10 plus videos, and they're all scheduled to drop in sequence. And it is kind of, in a sense, this level or type of effort, but specifically focus on something more enjoyable than watching me iterate on building Docker containers along with Perplexity. And again, this is the behind the scenes view of some of the challenges and the struggles and a bit of the frustration that's involved, the troubleshooting. If you use, I like to use the analogy, and if you allow me the license, it's like watching, not chefs, because chefs, but cooks cook in a kitchen. It's a bit messy. It's a bit disorganized conceptually from where most of us like to operate. And I'm saying that because, this is the nitty gritty. This is actually what professionals end up needing to do in order to make stuff work. None of this is really enjoyable. Now, I try to make it enjoyable because I want the color commentary to say something. I could just as easily get frustrated by the things not going exactly the way I would want them to go, but that would not serve you, the viewer, any great value. In fact, it would be a disservice for you. In fact, if I had been recording this with me on camera and me subsequently scratching my head and you seeing the level of frustration in my face, you probably would have tuned out, I don't know, shoot, at the point where the application was loading into the environment. Because you would have been like, Tim, what are you doing? Why are you torturing us this way? And it wouldn't have been any fun for me because I would have had to figure out a way to do color commentary for, an hour and 20 minutes. Who wants to hear me do color commentary and try to troubleshoot? It just, it's no fun. Trust me, folks. I've tried to do this on other videos and I failed miserably. But instead, I recorded it, I compressed it. And this is a bit more fun because, of course, I'm used some of the native animation stuff in Camtasia to have stuff move around on the screen a lot faster. For me, being able to record a video like this, that even at speed shows kind of the nuts and bolts of what's going on. And by the way, the pod initialization thing with these Docker containers, just as painful as watching Unsloth Studio download, probably more so. And then, of course, getting green pods, which you'll see later on in the video. And, ooh, cool, it's close, and then it's not. And by the way, this is like, I think, the first iteration of this. I ended up restarting this pod later on in the video. This is all pro forma. I don't know how I can make this any less sexy. I'm sure I could figure out a way, but me doing, a monologue over the top of all of this is just a pretty good way of making it less sexy and showing logs. And of course, us looking at, Unsloth Studio and Olares Envoy sidecar trying to start up. That's pretty unsexy. That's pretty unenjoyable. At the beginning and the end of this, I don't know how much interest you have in seeing the cooks in the kitchen doing their job. And by that, that goes, it's a callback to the previous analogy. I'm hoping that at the end of this video, because I've pulled back my creative curtain for you, that you walk away with the inspiration and the understanding that, even on the best day, it is not going to work the first time out. Occasionally you get lucky. Believe me, I've got a video where I did a retrospective effectively of what I was able to build with the BMAD method in approximately 4 hours. And it impressed me. And I mean, this is like in VS Code, and I'm just using the BMAD agent personas in order to get this stuff built. I'll probably put a link to that specific video in the description, because it's worth watching from the standpoint of, I actually got software working using a more rigorous approach than vibe coding. Now, this is not vibe coding. This is infrastructure as code. Same principles apply. Troubleshooting is troubleshooting. Spec-driven development, I've got a couple of videos queued up for that. Conversations with generative AI around that concept, and vibe coding as well. I have my strong opinions. If you've watched the channel for any length of time, then you kind of know what my strong opinions are on this topic. It doesn't need to be repeated. But, this is part and parcel to the field. And if you're a college student and you're thinking about this, a major in computer science, a major in software development, if you're in a coding boot camp, if you're doing things in your own home lab, home labbers probably are saying, yes, this is my experience as well. Folks who are coming into this area, this profession, this is what you get to do on the daily. And you can see, we're just kind of running time out at this point. I'm already 15 minutes and 30 seconds into a 20 some odd minute video. And this is boring. In a lot of ways, it's boring. Now, the tinkering is not boring. I mean, this for me helps me engage my problem solving skills. It keeps my neuroplasticity nice and squishy. So for me, at my age, where I'm at professionally, being challenged to figure out these things as I'm tinkering, especially given the fact that this is not really my core skill set. This is good. I dig this. I don't, this is fun. And I say fun from the standpoint of this is my weekend fun. This is what I get to do in the time that I now have available because our children are young adults to inspire and, lay it out the way it actually is, the way it practically is. To give the unvarnished factual basis for why you might not want to choose this field. And I'm saying this, not to dissuade you from going into technology, but to let you know that there are just head scratching moments. There are just boring periods of time where I know I've gone and been like, really, this is my chosen profession? Wow. Okay. That if you like the troubleshooting aspects of it, if you like figuring things out, if you enjoy going into technical stuff in order to understand how it works, then a video like this should serve as a great catalyst for you to keep going. But not everybody is wired this way. Not everybody prefers this. I know a number of people who've gotten out of the technology field because it's like, I just can't do this. This is not where my sweet spot is. This is not my strength. And I don't blame them because it's taken me years to develop enough concentration and focus and a willingness to just grind things out sometimes to get a result that it's like, I'm kind of glad that our children, for the most part, the older one kind of is interested in all of this. The younger one isn't. That it's like, look, it's a interesting path, but there are stretches of boredom like this sped up by 4x that it's like, oh my gosh, seriously, hurry up and wait, which is kind of some of my experience in the military, but that's a whole other different video thing. But, this is me in a sense, kind of walking you through very quickly the process of watching paint dry. It's just not pretty. It's not. But even in the midst of some of my frustration, I can make light of this. I can find humor in this. I can share this video with you because I know that at the beginning and the end of this, there's just a certain type of person who looks at this and is watching still at almost 20 minutes going, man, that is so cool. I'm passionate about this, and you're right. It stinks. It's boring, and most days are just frustrating, but I keep coming back to it. And that's just who we are. This is the way we're wired. So, we're getting close to the end on this thing. And one of the things that I do really want to mention is the fact that, oh my goodness, hope upon hope. It was really my big ambition in this video series, now that it's just going to be 2 parts, that I was going to get this thing running. And I was going to go, ta-da! And this is what Unsloth Studio is capable of doing for you on the Olares One. Container orchestrated application running, doing the thing. Really, genuinely doing the thing. But I don't get that victory lap. In fact, I just get more frustration from it because, it's like, Ah, well, this just stinks. And by the way, I need to check the timeline because, yeah, we're almost there. You're going to see it. You're going to look at it. Hopefully I can, I may, well, no, because I'm recording over this video. Actually, I'm going to put a pause when the perplexity window comes up. And I'm actually going to show you and pull up perplexity. And I will walk you through perplexity's explanation for where this ended. And it did not end well. I'm sitting back here and I'm just watching this thing and I'm going, oh my goodness. Yeah, and if you're still with me right now at this point in the video, then cool. I'm glad you were able to hold on. We've only got 2 minutes and 30 seconds left to go. So, it's kind of interesting, especially given the fact that we're watching this at 4x and we're still seeing pod initializing. And this is getting close to the end of this ordeal. And by ordeal, I mean, I was really surprised. Oh, holy goodness, something cut off. It didn't actually do what I'd hoped it would do. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to put it on pause. I'm going to pull up where things wrapped up, concluded with the perplexity troubleshooting. All right, I am back with you. But let's get to the end. Okay. You guys are not watching this because you think I'm such a great guy. You're actually watching this for this particular point, which is all of this points to deep image environmental issues with the studio in this container. And it is not just a small configuration fix. At this stage, continuing to fight the container buys you very little. The runtime is clearly misbehaving, and the CLI itself is being mangled by whatever wrapper is installed there. And that, folks, concludes what I would have thought was going to be a 3, maybe 4-part video series of building a container for Unsloth Studio and deploying it on the Olares One. But we didn't get there. And that's okay, because this learning hopefully shows you what might be in store for you. And it's not right, it's not wrong, it's just the way it works. So thank you all for carrying on with me through the end of the video and watching all the crazy cursor movement as Camtasia did the focus stuff, although it didn't do the most important stuff. I have no idea why, but whatever. I mean, it is what it is. So another how-to video. Learn that this just simply isn't going to work. Thank you, Perplexity, for working with me and pointing that out. All of this was brought to you by Tim Unscripted. Enjoy, and I appreciate your time watching this and all the videos on the channel.